Welcome to the Daily Plunge. We are in the book of Psalms. We're looking at Psalm 94. It starts off that the Lord is a God who avenges, that the Lord is one who reigns and makes judgment, that he renders a righteous judgment over the wickedness of this world. And we sometimes cower from a God who avenges, but it's actually something that we want. Otherwise, wickedness runs undaunted. And the Lord says that vengeance is mine. It belongs solely to the Lord. And so we want to see the Lord to avenge his righteous people. And the reason for this psalm is, the Lord reigns and the Lord avenges, yet we see injustice everywhere. We see that evil and wickedness prevails. And so it's calling on God to rise up and judge the earth, to come and shine forth and to dispel the darkness. We want to see God's justice come. And, part of what he's calling for is to give the arrogant and the proud, those who reject God, to give them what they deserve. And because they think that God doesn't matter and that they can get away with this. Now, we might ask ourselves, should we ask for the wicked to be punished? Well, what is our motivation? Do we want to see the innocent and the weak protected? Or do we just want to see the wicked punished? If we're seeking God's kingdom, then it is right for us to ask for the punishment of the wicked and to avenge the righteous. So we get into this text, and it says, how long? The world is an environment of injustice, and we recognize that our own brokenness feeds this wickedness in the world. So how long, in verse 3, before we have to wait for this? He goes on in verse 4 talking about how they boast and they're arrogant, thinking that, they're so powerful and wonderful that they can keep doing this. And they kill the vulnerable, right? They crush the widow and the homeless and the orphan. And then they have, they think that, we're asking in verse 7, God of vengeance, do you see this? The proud say, God doesn't care, God doesn't see. And it's the fool. He says, take notice, you senseless, you dullards who think that God, you fools that think that God doesn't see. The Lord that created hearing hears. The God who created eyesight sees. And the Lord who gave you a brain, which you're not using very well, knows your thoughts. God is omniscient. He knows all our thoughts. And as it says in verse 11, God knows how futile, how infantile our thinking is. As it goes on in verse 12, it's blessed is the one that the Lord disciplines. And to be disciplined by the law is a blessing because it curbs our sin. And we think about Galatians 3:24 through 26 about how we're told the law is a guardian for us. He goes on that God is steadfast and faithful, and he will not forsake us. He will not reject us, but God will act. It just seems like it takes a long time. But the Lord, in verse 15, promises righteous judgment. And then, who will rise up against the wicked? Who will stand up against the wicked? When our feet are slipping and we're filled with anxiety, we recognize that it's the Lord's unfailing love that comes through. In verse 22, do the wicked ally with God? No. But God, verse 22, there's that, but the Lord is going to bring justice. Thanks, friends. Have a blessed day.